This Week in 40K.
Good morning, everybody. That was about 45 seconds worth of intro music. As you can see, I'm Billy, and this is not Colin. This is Nemo. I believe Colin is having some difficulties, technical and or otherwise. But in the interest of getting this show on the road, I've made an executive decision to begin the show and just do it solo. As soon as we get a real Colin and not a reference both to a Pixar movie and or the Odyssey, depending on your favorite forms of, we got a Colin coming. I'm going to vamp for a few more minutes, and then he's going to join us. Let me see if I can, is there anyone in here who wants to talk about Pixar movies and or their favorite Greek myths? Because that's where Nemo comes from. It's actually Odysseus when he was captured by the Cyclops. He said his name was Nemo, which meant no man. It's very interesting. There was a lot of stuff that happened in 40K. We can all talk about our desire for the Dataslate and the fact that it still hasn't arrived. Apparently, there was a video that GW released that said it would be in 2 weeks, which some people are positing would sync up with the Kansas City Open rules release date. So that's a thing that happened. I can't talk about any of the other stuff that I prepared because that's what I'm going to talk about with Colin. But now would be a wonderful time to remind you of all the wonderful ways that you can support the network. That includes subscribe. Well, you can like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, which helps us with our numbers to some extent. Importantly, 5,000 YouTube subscribers gets us into the review access for GW products. And I don't know if their lawyers are as good as our lawyers, and so their NDA might not be as iron tight as they think it is. And that would be really fun to have access to. So like and subscribe here. You can also support us through paying us $15 a month. Gets you access to both the Discord and the members area of the YouTube section. That's a wonderful way to financially support us. I thought of it, though, because of this coffee mug here on the screen. We have a merch store that has wonderful t-shirts and mouse pads and coffee mugs, and just as soon as this show gets fully turned into a cartoon and converted into merch, this coffee mug is going to be replaced with a This Week in 40K coffee mug. We have one whole viewer who's watching me vamp while waiting for Colin to show up, which I've been assured will happen momentarily. Hello, one viewer. How are you doing? This is there's a Colin. All righty. Move. Just Big Billy. We might end this broadcast and restart it. Hello, Colin. Well, he's putting on his headphones. Well, now would be a wonderful time for me to just play the banner for what's new, and then we can get started. So, top story.
Our top story.
Hello, Colin. How are you this fine morning?
I set my alarm incorrectly.
Well,
So
you had banked a few weeks of my technical difficulties causing the show to begin a few minutes late.
who is Nemo and why are they in the stream?
Because it was the only way to get the overlay working, and Nemo, as the listeners would find out, is the name that Odysseus gave when the Cyclops asked who blinded him, and it means no man. So it's just a way to say that no one was there. It's also the name of a fish in a Pixar movie.
Okay. That seems reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did I miss?
You missed me telling the viewers about that, explaining the ways that they can support the network, including liking and subscribing this, giving us $15 a month for our Discord and Patreon. And then I realized that it's really not a back and forth collaborative kind of a medium. And so I told them about coffee mugs and how our logo will be on it shortly.
Okay. That sounds great.
Mm-hmm. But we just hit the reel for our top story, which we decided was GW Chicago. Jack Harpster winning with Twilight, now firmly number one in the ITC rankings, and some of the most fascinating games of rock, paper, scissors in the history of 40K took place.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's important to note that, like, Jack years ago had a problem with being salty.
Okay.
He had a problem with being salty. He was on stream all the time with Nick Nadavati, and he had a problem getting frustrated, and he worked really hard on it, and now he's awesome. And I think that that's just a wonderful story. Jack is just winning stuff like crazy. It doesn't seem to matter whether he practices or doesn't practice for the event. It doesn't seem to matter if he has reps with, like, the Necron list. He didn't have reps with it that he won Nova with, I think. And then the Twilight change is interesting because the realization is that light is particularly good against shooting armies, and large portions of the game don't take guns.
Right.
I think that's the extent of the logic about Twilight.
Well, that and GW terrain has basically magic boxes that can touch every objective from every other objective. So the fast melee army, like that's what Siegler was doing with Admech, right? The Rust Stalkers that moved 8 and up, advanced and charged. Right. Twilight Fountains are just that as well, except prettier.
Right.
So as Colin wakes up, maybe we should transition into what's new, because this is a more newsy week than a resultsy week.
Mm-hmm, it's true.
Okay.
What's new?
Well, the process of watching Colin wake up in real time is a truly glorious one.
I'm awake. What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Warhammer Day, which talked about 35 years of Warhammer 40,000. What were you doing with Warhammer 35 years ago, Colin?
Nothing. I was 7 years old. There was no Warhammer to be played at 7 years old.
That's very fair. What actually?
7 years old is when the regular Nintendo came out.
35 years. Yeah, that sounds about right.
And we had 2 of them in the house because my brother and I were incapable of sharing. And for the 80s, that was a very big deal. We were very posh and fancy with our 2 Nintendos.
Yeah, we just had the one, but and honestly, the TV I played it on is probably smaller than this computer screen.
Yeah. That sounds right. I played Nintendo on a TV that was in a wooden box.
I think there was wood on the outside of my TV as well. Did you have the Nintendo trackpad for the running games?
The trackpad or the joystick, you mean?
No, it was like, you know the game DDR, Dance Dance Revolution? Mm-hmm. It was like one of those pads that came with the original Nintendo.
Oh, yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I don't remember if I had that or not.
Okay. All right.
Even as a kid, I wasn't really much into moving around very much.
Fair enough. Well, enough of old-timey video games. There was the one thing I did want to just ask about, because again, more newsy week than resultsy week, is what is your earliest 40K interaction? You started when you were a teenager, right?
Yeah.
So if they're celebrating 35 years, I'm curious for a little nostalgia trip with 40K with you. Like, what are your early 40K?
I bought the 2nd edition box set.
Did you?
With money I made from chores.
Mm-hmm.
And split it with a friend. And I took the Space Marines and he took the Orcs. And we played on the carpeted floor of my family room.
Mm-hmm.
And then we continued to play on bigger and bigger floors.
Yes.
Occasionally playing over giant rooms and not at all an 8x4. Much bigger than that.
Right.
The only memory I really have of the game at that point was the stupid Imperial Assassin. Remember, there was only the one Imperial Assassin. That was his name. And he would jump out of Deep Strike and like throw a vortex grenade at my characters, and then they would just die. And I didn't like that. I then played a little. I just didn't stop playing for a few years until I met Chuck and Vince. and then I played the actual game on the appropriate table size, following the actual rules, which infuriated me at the time because of how obnoxious warp spiders were, and that was all that I ended up ever playing against.
With warp spiders with the heavy flamer template that forced
that if you rolled your initiative, you got out of, but then you couldn't get out of the second one. Joke's on you. There's multiple people in the unit shooting that flamer at you.
And it was initiative test or die, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like you'd have initiative 4, so you'd have like, you'd have like, oh, we'll roll a 4 up. Okay, I saved it. Well, not really, because the next one kills you. Oh,
yeah. I was particularly a fan of it into orcs because I believe they had an initiative 2, so they needed to roll a 1 or die. It was a really effective means of crowd control. So for those of you who think that current rules are a problem, there were some interesting things back in the day. I too played most of my early 40K on my bedroom floor. I, however, did not have someone else to play against. So there were massive battles of the Eldar versus the NPC miniatures that I had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of NPC miniatures, I think that's a wonderful segue into all the new guard stuff that's been revealed.
I also think the new Chaos character dude is cool.
Oh, we're going to get to him, but NPC, like the guard. I know you're a big fan of the guard.
I am.
Defend early World War II era armies in the 41st millennium.
Well, first of all, in 40K, everything's ridiculous.
That's true.
So to argue that the ornithopter style planes in Admech make more sense than guards World War II tanks, I think everything's ridiculous. I think that the guard aesthetic appeals to me because Space Marines aren't humans. Okay. I mean, they are, but they aren't. And I think that you need a human being in the game as a what's the word? As a comparison, as a like a control. Like in order for people to understand how everything fits into the world, it's helpful to have a human being so they can be like, oh, that's who I am. And it makes sense. So an army of human beings that are just dudes that die easily, I think it actually helps with the lore and the aesthetic of the game quite a bit.
That's a very well-reasoned argument, and I completely agree with you. And I never thought of it that way. And I still find Guard to be absolutely ridiculous and probably the least appealing of all of the armies.
Oh, man, those tanks give me feels. I just love the tanks. I don't care about the guardsmen very much. I also like Bolgrin and Ogrin quite a bit.
Okay.
And I also like the order structure.
Okay.
Of it's about organization. You know, it's about orders from there's a lot about Guard that is actually quite flavorful. They always have the most artillery, even if it's not the most accurate.
Right.
There's a lot that's flavorful about Guard. I don't really have any problems with Guard fitting into the Grim Dark. I think that it's a very obvious way that humans would fight, and I don't care that the tanks look old-timey because I think it's cool. Excuse me. So no, I'm all in on Guard. I think the new Guardsmen look cool. Yeah. I don't know that I'll replace my 200 painted metal Valhallans.
Oh, you're a Valhallan.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I actually so first of all, my father has a graduate degree in European history.
Okay.
And so World War II was a real big thing in my house. I've seen a phenomenal amount of terrible war movies from before my birth. Just so many. The Longest Day, A Bridge Too Far, Bridge Over the River Kwai, all of them. And so for me, the retroness of that is appealing from the Guard tanks. Because I have that strong attachment to the World War II lore. But I always like the Russian stuff the best. I don't know why. And so when I could get fluffy coated people in the cold, I was all for it. So that's what I have.
That's very fair. As someone who started playing Eldar at the very beginning because of the sleek futuristicness, I think the blocky old timiness is just sort of anti my aesthetic. But I agree. And having an all metal army in the year of our Lord 2022 is fun.
Only my guardsmen are metal. The vehicles are all plastic.
Oh, you don't have the really awkward metal gun on the front of a plastic turret that just totally throws the entire weight of the miniature off?
I do have some hellhounds like that, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I think that guard are great. I think that they do need a very serious model line refresh. And I'll remind everyone that at Charity Hammer we did a community survey, and the community agrees.
Yeah.
Guard was by far the army that people most wanted to see get a model line refresh. So I'm hoping that the reason we haven't gotten the codex is that we're getting a bunch of new models. And I know that sometimes supply chain means that delays us a little bit. So on the show that is neither grim nor dark, I will say, woo, guard models.
Absolutely. And I think there were a bunch revealed at Warhammer Day, and more even came out today.
Oh, I haven't seen the ones from today because, as previously noted, I was asleep.
Yeah, no, there were actually some very cool looking new minis that came out today. I would recommend going over to Warhammer Community and checking those out.
I also enjoy the Hank going to everybody and saying, I think the heavy weapon platforms are smaller, over and over again to everyone. So
yeah, there is an interesting discussion on our Discord about the base size of the heavy weapons teams.
What's the article I'm reading this morning, Billy? Oh, attention.
It was linked off of rumors in the Discord. And there are pictures in the Discord. There are a bunch of new. I'm really bad at naming probably Scions, or maybe these are Cadians. I think these are new Cadians with a bunch of new weapons.
Do you know anything about the Imperial Guard?
I know that the planet of Cadia broke before the Cadians did. The Catechins are Rambo. Death Corps of Krieg are fetishists.
These are some cool models.
There we go.
Woo. Okay, maybe we're redoing all of our guardsmen.
Getting a little Cadian in it?
I don't know. I really don't actually like playing with metal models.
Oh. I put washers on the bases of all my minis. I like a little heft.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to some other news. As Colin alluded to, World Eater drips continue to come. There is to my opinion, absolutely stunning foreign character on top of Blood Crusher.
He's real cool.
Yeah, talk about something that does appeal to me is the overall Khorne aesthetic and generally playstyle. Run across and smash. Basically, I'm a fantasy cavalry player living in a 40k world, and if you give me cavalry that works in 40k, my Eldar might take a slight break as we get some skulls for the Blood God. Just fucking awesome. Also, speaking of metal models, the original Blood Crushers are actually just dangerous because they're solid hunks of pewter with big spikes.
Right. I think there already were plastic ones, though.
There were, but I have probably 12 metal ones, and they haven't been good since Fantasy 7th edition, so why?
I played Khorne in Age of Sigmar.
Did you?
I did. And I did have Blood Crushers.
Were they good there?
Around on their juggernauts.
I'm pretty sure mine are still on square bases.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's a thing that will have to be fixed.
What else happened on our Warhammer Day reveals?
Yes. So the other big thing that I think is worth talking about is confirmation that some of the new expansion books are not going to have rules for competitive play. So specifically, there's something called Arc of Omens, which is talking about Abaddon flying his ship through space and doing cool things. And the rules that are coming for that are for
making movies, making songs, and fighting around the world. It's fine.
I do not know this song.
Oh, it's from South Park.
Oh, you know
what's the man? I just woke up, people. The guy from Gladiator.
Russell Crowe.
Thank you. It's Russell Crowe's television show, pretend television show in South Park, where he goes around the world fighting people, singing songs and fighting people. And he does it on a tugboat named Tuggy, I think, who also punches people with him.
As one does. Not having teenagers in the house, my day-to-day attachment to South Park has waned a bit since I was
my
one.
kids don't watch television. That's not a thing.
Oh, I guess that's right. Kids these days are just on their phones watching the TikToks and the other things.
The kids these days on the phones with the TikToks.
They can get off my lawn if I had a lawn.
Now it's
Wait,
important
say-
to remember that I had an onion on my belt. It
That
was
you
a
had a
red
what?
onion. We didn't have yellow onions because of the war.
Oh, of
Now,
course.
Nichols had pictures of bumblebees on them. Give me 5 nickels for... Never mind. Let's move on. Okay.
More old-timey cartoon takes.
Yeah.
So back to Ark of Omens, where the
Okay.
Abaddon flying in his ship around the world, blowing up planets,
Fighting people.
like Cadia, that was unable to defend itself because of bad Imperial Guard. So basically, the campaign books that we used to get that used to have very imbalanced competitive rules. They're saying no more of that. It's only going, those sorts of rules are going to be for casual narrative play or other systems like Kill Team. There's going to be a Kill Team boarding actions game, which, if you like small skirmish games, looks awesome. It's for audience of this show, probably primarily a source of really cool models. All
Why do
those
they gotta make so many other games?
there is a large audience for it. One of the best things I ever did for my pocketbook was committing to 40K only, because I fall down those rabbit holes real easily.
Yeah, and then I don't play the games because there's no time.
Well, and there's not a lot of people to play it with. But if you can find someone who shares your love of a specialty game, it is a fun little rabbit hole to go down.
I do love me some Blood Bowl.
Blood Bowl is wonderful. I have often said if they ever came out with Man of War or Battlefleet Gothic, those ones would get me back.
Oh yeah, Man of War. Yeah, I'm with you.
Man of War, sweet.
Boats
And then
with
the
guns
final-
shooting each other.
What?
I said boats with guns shooting each other.
Yes. With little cardboard range finders, and they hit everything under them.
Yes.
The height of early 90s gaming technology. Final piece of news that came out is a teaser that most people assume is Dark Admech getting added into the game.
Oh, okay.
Which, if you want to talk about something that fits the overall aesthetic of 40K and will hurt a
Both
lot
grim
of people's
and dark.
pocketbook, yes, very grim, very dark, very cool. Some of the best hobby projects I've ever seen have been people hobbying their regular AdMech into Dark AdMech.
So Chuck has, I don't know, 7 Chaos Armies.
Yeah.
And so I don't know exactly how many different ones there are. But the one that I play against the most is his Dark Mechanicum.
Yeah.
And it is really cool. He has made some stupid phenomenal models. So the fact getting actual Dark AdMech is interesting.
Yeah. So that was the stuff that was revealed at Warhammer Day, 35 years of 40K.
Yeah.
With that, shall we transition over to what's winning and talk about gameplay itself?
Sure.
Lovely.
What's winning?
So, what is winning? Same
Harlequins.
as the old boss.
Yeah, it's well, I haven't had a chance to look at all of the tournaments because you're covering most of them today. What is winning, Billy?
To your point, Harlequins and Tyranids.
And Emperor's Children.
There are some Emperor's Children, although honestly, it was a very light week for events, which is why we spent so much time on news. And I actually I see 2 Emperor's Children's out of all of the lists we're going to talk about. But yeah, there was the MetaWatch article last week where they talked about what was winning and did a
And gave their hot take that win rates are what matters.
Baby steps. Win rates do matter. Are there far better statistics that are much richer in data and descriptive? Yes, but at least they're using data. Billy is driving the rig runner today, dead center of the street and full speed ahead. Thank you very much, Jason. That's funny. Yes, I assure you next week we will return to our regularly scheduled driver. But Colin and Heavy Machinery at this moment is probably not the best pairing.
I don't know. It was such a weird night.
Yeah.
And I woke up at 6:20 to make sure that the kids were all awake and going to school. And then I set my alarm for supposedly 20 minutes later, giving me adequate time to wake up and get ready. But I set it, in fact, for an hour and 20 minutes later.
That will happen. That will happen.
Well, it was a level of incompetence that is only surpassed by me running my car into a post last week. I'm really not doing great at the moment, if I'm honest, everybody. There's a lot of bad Colin mistakes happening.
Perfectly fair, but on the flip side, I was unable to get a computer to work effectively 2 weeks in a row. So, your hosts over here are showing their age.
You don't look old, though.
Well, I appreciate that. It's my just happy outlook. It's the non-grim nor darkness that I put out into the world. There's also the, for a period of time going forward, the non-kidness, not having to deal with small children, I think helps in the not aging.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, first of all, big shout out in the Neither Grim Nor Dark show. Mm-hmm. Big shout out to GW, who we almost exclusively bitch about as fans of their game and rarely say nice things about, which blows me away because I don't know about you guys, but I regularly go to the store and purchase models and then get in the car and think, oh my God, why did I spend that much money on toys? Like, it's an expensive hobby that takes up a ton of free time. I got a bunch of Shroud Runners today, which I'm actually a little bit excited about. Are they fun, Billy? Am I going to enjoy putting them together?
Yeah, they're really, they go well together well, and they play so well on the tabletop compared to what you would think.
Great. So I'm going to build some Shroud Runners today. But what I wanted to say is the GW events are being run incredibly well. Mm-hmm. The GW tournaments are getting a lot of people. My friends, I haven't gotten to go to one because I had a conflict on the one that was here, and I haven't been really traveling to big tournaments. But I am blown away at how much my friends love these GW events. They like the terrain. They like how it's being run. They like how it pods, how it brackets. Just a big shout out to GW for doing all these tournaments. It really makes it so that Frontline Gaming and WTC aren't the only people making tournament decisions. And I just think that's really good for the game. So the top cut was 16 of the 205 people, I think.
It says 208 from our data source, but
209 on here.
Yeah, 200 plus.
And sorry to I'm not going to read the names of the people that got last in this event. I was going to, but I'm not going to. So in the top cut, we had a pretty good mixture of the things that are good. There was a bunch of NIDs, some Knights. There was some Yunari in there. I didn't actually look at the Yunari list. No one actually plays the Yunari the way that Billy and I play it. Hey, he's got D cannons.
Yes.
His list is actually very similar. This is, for those that are wondering, this is Brandon White, and his Yunari list is similar. He just has a Falcon and Baharath that we don't run. Anywho, evidently the Falcon lets you first turn charge Banshees into people, which is amusing. So, Anywho, let's start with first place, Mr. Jack Harpster, now number 1 in the ITC, a fantastic human that I've been trying to get to Charity Hammer for several years now. Jack was one of the first people I ever met when I started traveling for tournaments, in fact. Anyways, Twilight Pathways, or Twilight Falls, it says. Twilight Pathways is a spell. Mm-hmm. Twilight is really good at close combat. So if you have the ability to hide your stuff, be behind walls, reach objectives, it's great. Light's big advantage is its speed and its extra durability against shooting. If you're not worried about those two things because of the table or because of the other armies in the meta, then maybe it's Twilight. And Twilight has been doing well. It just hasn't performed as well as Light, but I think there are situations like this where Jack is right, and it's all about Twilight. Mm-hmm. So he has 3 big units of beatdown that don't go in boats because it's GW terrain. And then he's got 5 boats full of dudes, 5 boats full of 5, and then he's got some Death Jesters and a Shadow Seer and a Troop Master. That's the list. Harlequin list, not complicated. He did put fusion on the guys in boats, but not on the big units, which makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. So congrats to Jack. going undefeated and winning the event. Second place is Ben Sherwin, who we've talked about a few times on the show. He's playing Emperor's Children. This is interesting to me. Emperor's Children, the last few weeks, has been the thing we see instead of Bile.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bile is the best one, but I understand the argument for EC being the best one. But it's interesting that we have two sub-factions whose lists are 80 to 90% the same as each other. Maybe it's 80% because Noise Marine's in the EC. So 80% the same as each other. Both are taking Terminators. Both are taking Possessed. Both are taking Abaddon. Both are taking the Demon Prince. Both are taking the Master of Obsessions.
Possession.
Master of Possession. So they take similar stuff. But this list has a big unit of Possessed. It has some Bikers, some Spawn, a Rhino, and then lots of Noise Marines. This list actually doesn't have Terminators. So after I said all of that, I was wrong. Third place was the person who trashed me at Las Vegas Team Tournament, Mr. Ogden, playing, it looks like exactly the same list with Shadow Sun and 3 big units of suits in the Farsight Enclave. Oh, no, excuse me. He's tasked up this time with Long Strike. He just wrecked people. The game with John was real brutal. Then fourth place is the Boy King himself, John Lennon, playing Kraken with so much smite, I believe is what this list is.
Oh, is
he
it?
He has a Sporicist. He has a Parasite. He's got some Tyrant Guard. He's got 2 Tyrants, one on foot, one with the Reaper, 2 big units of Raveners, 2 units of Zoanthropes, a unit of Venomthropes. Really just super fast, very punchy, and lots of mortals and spores. Fantastic. And he's playing Kraken because speed, like we talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he won an event with that list the week before, right?
Yes. Did he? No. Harpster won. It was their big event down in the Crucible, I believe. Their favorite event down in Florida, and Harpster did win that one. Not John.
Okay. And fifth place is Mark Parker, who had Tyranids. Leviathan. The things we expect.
Mm-hmm.
So GW Open in Chicago, pretty successful.
Let me correct myself. It was John Lennon who won Crucible. Harpster took 3rd with Drukari.
Okay. So I haven't looked at the other events this week because I'm unprepared. And so what we're going to do now is Billy's going to tell me about events, and I'm going to act surprised because I don't know anything about them.
So the next biggest event was the Battle for Salvation. I know, it's really exciting.
I was acting surprised.
I know. I was giving you a chance. In West Nyack, New York.
Okay.
This was 80 players, 6 rounds. It was won by Daniel Walmuth with Inari.
Yeah.
I'm just going to have us take credit for all Inari wins going forward, despite the fact
we cannot do that.
I know, but I actually, and specifically, I don't think we can take a ton of credit for this brand of list. So Farseer Skyrunner with Crushing Orb and the 4+ Invuln spell. Then he has a Shadow Seer with Mirror and Shards of Light, which I believe is the Clown's targeted smite. Incarn, 15 Rangers, and then a bunch of Aspect Warriors. Fire Dragons, Howling Banshees, Striking Scorpions, Swooping Hawks, Warp Spiders, 2 Clown Bikes with Bolus, and then 2 Falcons and 3 D Cannons. I am going to dump D Cannons. I think we, and by we I mean you, can take some credit for just seeding that out into the world. But this one strikes me as an army designed much more for scoring in the mission than killing your opponent. With that many,
I thought he had a warp gate too, right?
Do I see? Where did I hate?
It's at the bottom of the list, I think.
No, it's not at the bottom of the list, and it's not at the top of the list.
I thought this was literally the one we looked at together and we talked about the warp gate because of.
I know we talked about a warp gate. There is not the word warp gate webway gate does not appear on his army list.
Well, fine, Billy.
He also doesn't have Baharoth, which I think is another big part of that package, because you just sit Baharoth next to the webway gate, and that's close to 15 secondary points. That's
Okay.
very cheap. But this
Sure.
one, I have to assume that they were allowing Inari to take Ashuriani secondaries.
Everybody seems to now.
Yeah. Yes. I will not throw any shade there. So you could take the Aspect Warrior secondary because, just killing stuff is going to get you that. And as you said earlier, those Falcons let you show up in fun and interesting places. And really, given the amount of people who are putting Falcons in, I think it would behoove us to at least try it out just to see what we think about it.
Yeah.
But a very Aspect Warrior type of Inari list for Daniel Wolmuth, so good on him. There was an Evan Tompkin who played Tau, and his list, as it pulls up, is Tau Sept and Shadow Sun, more commanders, 2 Sun Sharks, because, why not bring really obnoxious planes, and 2 Crisis Suit units.
Because who needs friends?
Who needs friends when you can just blow them all off the table?
Yep, that's right.
But as long as they're going to let you bring planes, in Tau, you should probably bring planes. Alex Fennel brought Necrons in 3rd place, and he had no planes or Catan. Just a lot of Scorpex and some Scarabs. And then
I bet him. He's very nice.
Yes. There was some Tau after that, some Chaos Space Marines, so on and so forth. So a well-rounded group at Battle for Salvation, but two fast Codex Craft World at the top of the 2 biggest events this week.
Yeah.
And I think that is interesting given the narrative and the support of the data that those armies are not necessarily the strongest.
Oh, the data is that Harlequins are absolutely the strongest.
Harlequins, yes, but Inari,
Craft World Elder in general is doing fine. They're not underpowered.
Yeah.
But they've not been winning events.
Yes.
And I do think that we're beginning to see Inari outperform Hail, which I think is just the way that's just what's up.
Yes.
I miss Doom and Guide, but other than that, I'm all in.
Mm-hmm.
So if Inari actually gets nerfed, I'm going to go back, I think, to playing Guns and Brains. The custom list that does incredible psychic proficiency while shooting you. Because I think that dwarfs aren't going to 10 to 20 mortals hitting them in the middle of the psychic phase before all the guns hitting them. Anyways, I digress. What's the other tournaments we're talking about? Is that it?
No, there are many more. I will just say if Inari gets nerfed, 1, I will be upset and surprised, and 2, I will probably become a Chaos Marine player.
Well, I think what will happen is that they'll nerf Harlequins.
And my sincere hope is that they do not nerf melee troops in big blocks.
Yes.
So ignore what Jack Harpster did this weekend.
Yeah.
There were 2 events that were done in Europe in systems that are very hard to find, so we'll talk very briefly about them. There was the Chasau Buccaneers Open 2022 in Chasau, Switzerland. 46 players, 5 rounds. Knights took 1st and 2nd. I believe they tied each other, which, boy, that's a fun game. Then there was some Black Legion, some Tau, and some Salamanders, 5th place. There was the From Hell project in, I cannot pronounce French names, so Fromelles, France?
Sounds like cheese.
It does. But I think most places in France are either going to sound like cheese or like some sort of wine.
Fair.
Yeah. That one was 30 players. Chaos Knights on that one. So big stompy robots doing well over in Europe. Necrons in 2nd place, followed by Drukhari. Then some Thousand Suns and some Imperial Knights.
Okay.
The 2 more events that we actually could look at and see, there was the Fun and Games Fall GT in Blacksburg, Virginia. Only 25 players, 5 rounds. 28 did sign up, so it sort of made the cut. That was won by a Christopher Martin with Tyranids. Leviathan, he had 7 warriors and 4 warriors, a unit of 4 Raveners, 2 Harpies, and an Exocrine. Actually, a decent amount of Exocrines showing up, which I find surprising, but you seem to be nodding along with.
Well, they're very durable, and they shoot well for not that many points.
Okay. And guns are good. In a world of melee armies, the army that has just enough guns to keep the opponent honest is in a happy place.
Right.
There was Harlequins in second place. This one was light. He had not talked to Jack. 5 boats full of dudes, but he did have one big unit of melee. So I do think people are realizing that that is a useful tool. And he had 2 units of 3 melee bikes. So
Right.
with the glaive, not the bolus.
Mm-hmm.
It's a choice. I wish there were more fast attack slots in Inari because I would love some melee clown bikes, but it doesn't really fit.
Well, the bolas are so good, and they're
Bolas
cheaper.
are so good, and you really only have the 3 slots, so the one non-craft world choice.
Right.
Listen to the event results. Come for the event results. Hear us just randomly talk about our Inari list as we go through it. Third place was Necrons. This one was an arcing lot. Just all of the Necron tanks.
That's what I thought was going to be good when they said that the Silent King was going to be core. And all the vehicles were like, when they said all the vehicles were going to be core, I presumed it would be back to 8th edition, where I'd have to walk into the table and play against all of the vehicles for Necrons, and all of them would have full rerolls.
Do we know why that hasn't happened?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't understand. I mean, well, partially because that doesn't score secondary as well.
That's right, because they need to do actions, and that has to be infantry.
Right.
Or
and part of it, too, is that everybody plays pre-game move, everything's OBSEC, which is just way better to have a bunch of chunky infantry when you do that. It's just not the best way, but I appreciate that someone's rocking it.
Yeah. So then 4th place was Leviathan Tyranids, 9 warriors, 4 warriors, 2 exocrines, 2 carnifexes.
Nice.
So mix of bugs. And then in 5th place, there was a Yunari. He only went 3 and 2, but this was also a dual Falcon, lots of aspects. This is actually very, very similar to Daniel Walmuth's list that won Battle for Salvation.
Yep.
And then the final event that we're going to attempt to talk about took place in Hungary. And listen to me say some Hungarian words. It took place in Purgatus, or no, excuse me. This was the Purgatus LCO TSV in Jezfenisaru. Jezfenisaru is how we're going to say that. Hungary. This one had only 22 players in 5 rounds, but I just loved the place names and the people names, and there weren't enough events, so it gets covered. David Matthias played with Light Harlequins. He had 6 boats with 5 dudes inside, all of the characters, multiple Shadow Seers, Troop Master, Solitaire, Death Jesters. And then he had 8 bikes, split 3-3-2, and they were all bolus. So it's hard to come up with a bunch of different iterations in a data sheet army where more than half of those data sheets are characters. And we will, if I had to guess, clowns are right at the top of the list along with Nids to get nerfed. So
now my question is, were there dwarfs in any of these events?
There were no dwarfs finishing highly. Some dwarfs were allowed at events, and my understanding is that they had a roughly 55% win rate.
Right, only getting to take half of their data sheets.
Yeah, there were 4 players at GW who had them. 55 wins means, some 3 and the equivalent of a bunch of 3 and 2s and 2 and 3s.
Right.
And anyone who's bringing Leagues of Votann at this point is probably, especially to a GW event where they're definitely not letting you take more than those 3 data sheets, probably more of a hobby player than in anything else. If I could stereotype folks that I know absolutely nothing about. Back to the Purguats LCO.
Yeah, okay. Back to the Hungarian tournament. We got you.
Oh, but I'm enjoying the names. In second place, there was Necrons that went 4-1. No Planes, no Catan. Third place. So second place, his name was Matt Cesar. Third place, Peter Carosi. I'm mostly doing this because the 4th place guy's name is great. Third place, Chaos Demons, 4-1 with Bellicor, Scarbrand, Bloodthirster, Fate Skimmer, 30 letters, 10 blues, 8 flamers, big bugs, probably 30 bloodletters and some flamers is what you're going to see for quite a while if my semi-expert opinion it means anything. Then in fourth place, there was Gurgale Ratkai, but the A with the thing over it, so I have no idea how it's actually pronounced. He had Tau, 2 loaded devilfish, 2 hammerheads, 1 unit of suits, lots of crutes. And then in 5th place, there was Gabar Sordas with Custos, 3 Caladius, 3 Dreads, and just enough other stuff to play the game.
That is a lot of fun names, you're right.
It was. And they look even better than they sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
When I play Civilization, which is a thing that I play semi-regularly.
Okay.
I have played every edition of Civilization, including Civilization Revolution.
Okay.
And the most recent one, I have hundreds of hours of co-op with friends.
Mm-hmm.
And when we play, I pick a country, and then I always rename all of the city names to puns, because it's easier for me to keep track than the city names they give me.
Sure.
When I play Hungary,
oh boy,
I simply rename all of my cities to food that sounds delicious.
That's fair.
Because then when everybody looks at my territory, they get hungry.
So my thing
there was a long way to go for a joke that Billy didn't enjoy.
Oh no, I enjoyed it very much. It was just leading me into my own Hungary jokes, which is that I always thought that Hungary could just invade Turkey and answer their problems very simply.
Mm-hmm.
But
you could only invade Turkey once a year, though. Only on Thanksgiving.
But happy Canadian Thanksgiving to our Canadian listeners from yesterday. So, good job. Yeah, good job on you guys there.
Alex McDougall's in Portland for his wedding anniversary, in fact.
Oh, happy wedding anniversary, Alex.
Yeah.
The other thing I learned about Hungary is one of my favorite places that I ever have visited is Budapest. Absolutely super high recommendation. But do you know why Hungary is called Hungary? Why the country has that name?
I don't.
Yeah, neither did I. It's the land of the Huns. It's where they came from.
Oh.
So it has nothing to do with the fact that they don't have enough to eat and merely the peoples who, sacked Rome.
Well, naming your country we don't have enough to eat would be a bad move.
It would, but I think if you ask most Americans, they would be much more likely to say some sort of I need food pun than the land of the Huns.
My wife and I like basically all fantasy television. And one of the things that my wife giggles at is the names of everywhere.
Oh,
well, if we're going to rescue the princess, we are going to have to go through the forest of despair.
Mm-hmm.
And then through the marsh of incontinence. Like, it's just like, what? Like, who? Like, why? Yes. The forest of despair is going to be dangerous if you name it the forest of despair. If you call it the happy go marshmallow forest, then probably not as bad.
Yeah, that's more in the Care Bears,
Hello Kitty Forest Adventure.
Yeah.
I did appreciate you laughing at Swamp of Incontinence.
Swamp of Incontinence is good. I flashed back to my recent rewatch of Labyrinth, which many good reasons to watch that. But they have like the Swamp of Infinite Stinkiness or something. And we're just the worst thing that can happen is you smell really bad for the rest of your life. Well, it doesn't kill you. It doesn't.
Well, I'd have to kill myself. So,
I guess I don't know. I have mild allergies, and so my sense of smell has always been bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Is that it? That's all we're going to say about that. Your sense of smell is bad, so you're comfortable smelling bad for the rest of your life is a weird.
I don't think I'm going to kill myself if I fall into
Bog of Eternal Stench.
Chris, the Bog of Eternal Stench. Let's give you credit where credit is due.
Yeah. After he was the only one that laughed at our Hungary references.
We have a dedicated fan base of people we pay to help produce the show. You want just. I feel like I talk about the sports teams that you wear. Do you want to talk about the Mariners at all in the last few minutes that we have here on the show?
I had not watched a baseball game from first to last pitch in 20 years.
Wow.
The Mariners have been bad for 20 something years, and I had given up watching baseball because it takes entirely too much time. And I this year there's a bunch of young guys doing a playoff run. Young guys doing a playoff run is one of my favorite sports things. So I watched both playoff games this weekend. Incredibly fun. Really enjoyed. Way to go, Mariners. If you guys don't know, they had the second biggest come from behind victory in the history of playoff baseball. And now they go off to play the baseball equivalent of the Patriots.
They're playing the Yankees?
No, it's the Astros, because it's the team that cheats all the time and everybody hates now.
That's they cheat poorly. I do just want to shout out to Scott Dielman that yes, someone did have to laugh, but in general, Colin calls me out and not laughing at his jokes, just as my wife often has conversations with me inside of her head that I have no part of. I always laugh at Colin's jokes inside my head. I'm just sometimes setting up my next point.
It's fair. What's the room of darkness and despair behind you?
It's a bathroom.
That's not that exciting.
No, it's really not. Welcome to San Francisco living, where obscene amounts of rent give you 1,100 square feet apartments.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, I've got to go.
Yes, you do, and I got you out of here on time. So,
good job driving the Ridge Runner today.
One attempt. I guess I'll do the outro because I'm on the left-hand side of the screen here. He's been Colin and I've been Billy because someone had to be ? Next week we'll be back to the regularly scheduled program and drivers, and all will be well with the world.
I will wake up.
Indeed. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.